Mirror image stuff. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for joining, everyone. We've had an exciting show already, and we've not even got started.
Modern technology, right?
you know, I often tell my fellow software engineers if it were easy, we would be out of a job. So it's okay. This actually works out perfect for me because I saw you a lot in Orlando, and never really got a chance to talk to you. And I gotta
I'm
say, go ahead.
I'm a little surprised. It felt like I talked to everybody. I
Oh,
didn't get much sleep in Orlando.
well, that's what I was gonna say. Is from what I saw you in Orlando, you certainly lived up to no quit and quitter. I mean,
Queter, queter, don't quit and queter.
you were always going. You were always doing something. But so this is a little inappropriate of me, but I'm a slightly inappropriate person. Is
Well, we're libertarians.
Yeah, anytime I see someone with a visible disability, I get curious. Not judgmental. I'm one of those people who's curious about different foods, different cultures, different everything. I see something different, I get curious. But our society isn't always like, oh yeah, go talk about that.
No, you're absolutely right, actually, and that's why I love young children. They walk right up to you and they ask the question.
Right, right. But it actually plays into part of your issues in your campaign. So now I get to ask you, what exactly is your disability?
I was born with a condition called Osteogenesis Imperfecta. The Latin translates to bone gene imperfect, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually a misnomer. It's a mutation of the collagen type 1 gene. And collagen
Okay.
type 1 actually is like the structure for all of your organs, including your skin and your liver and your heart, your intestines, everything. And
Right.
what collagen type 1 acts like is, have you ever seen concrete poured?
Oh yes.
Okay, the mesh and rebar, they lay that wire and they lay that rebar, and when
Yep,
they're
that's
doing a
right.
column, they lay that up. So, what the mutation causes is a lack of interconnectivity of collagen type 1. And so, as you're growing, your bone doesn't grow out as much. The ends of my femurs are about that big around. The middles of my femurs are less than my pinkies.
Ooh.
And you end up with a low bone density. And interestingly enough, I don't know if this is a pro marijuana show, but CBD has been proven to improve the interconnectivity of collagen type 1.
Well, I've got this little lifetime libertarian pen on, so
So,
we've been in the war on drugs since pretty much our incarnation. So yeah, pro recreational, pro medical, and more to the point, just pro getting government out of whatever people need to do for their own best interest in every facet of their life, right?
yeah. And interestingly enough, the government got in my way in seeking a pharmaceutical drug that is used to treat my condition. It increases my bone density. Um, if you've
Interesting.
seen the if you've seen the commercials for things like Boniva or Fosamax, those
Mm-hmm.
are oral versions of the same family of drugs that are used for osteoporosis to increase bone density. The one
Mm-hmm.
I get is called Pamidrine. It's been used for post chemo patients, Paget's disease, other low bone density disorders since the 1970s. But when I was 15 years old, I had to find a way around the FDA.
It's an early age to start having to take on the Fed.
Well, I was already taking on the educational system and insurance companies and global corporate attorneys. So it wasn't that hard.
Okay. Well, that I think that's going to really work to the benefit of your constituency, as it goes back to the no quit and quitter. You've been having to been having to quite for quite some time. Good job, Rob. You've been having to fight for quite some time. You know how to by now.
Yeah, well, and the advantage I had was poverty.
Okay.
Um, well, when you come from a very poor family, both of your parents worked very hard. And so the time for things like fighting the FDA isn't there for them. So I had the initiative, I had the ability, I stepped up. I fought the school system, I fought insurance companies, I fought the lawyers for those companies, and I got around the FDA all by the age of 15.
That's gorgeous. Before I forget, I need to take your website here and throw it out so that people can be sure to go to it. And
Yeah,
up there,
we have a heck of a platform going on that website. My policy team, I call them sharks because they never stop hungering for the next thing. They're always setting up new meetings, extra meetings, doing this and doing that, and I'm stay fairly involved, almost too involved if you ask my campaign manager. But they're really great at their job. And actually, I should shout out to Michael Burns, Paul Grindle, William Smith, Pietro Garcia, or am I saying that right? Garassi. Sorry, my administrative assistant is in the corner, just corrected me. She does that well. And Tyler Smith.
well, they've done a good job on the site. I like the way it's organized. You can quickly navigate through the issues. You have a nice, just sort of terse presentation, and then you have a more button where you can go learn plenty more. So if somebody's passionate about getting into the nuts and the bolts, you're a good candidate to cover that for them, and it's a good site to do that.
And when it comes to libertarian candidates, I tell them, steal my policy, take it, use it, run with it. If you like it, if it works for you, use it.
Right, right. I mean, for that matter, I don't know how you feel about this, but I would often be happy if the D's and the R's would steal my policies. It's like, I want this done. I don't care who does it. I just want this done.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, right from the day I submitted my petitions in Albany, I've been having a good effect on all other parties in New York.
That is beautiful, man.
We had the COVID-19 social distancing thing come through. This is my favorite story to tell, because I was diving in. I was a fish out of water kind of still in March, and we get to the BOE, and they're enforcing this social distancing, and they're only taking 2 people up to the submission office at a time, and they want us all to stay far apart. And I end up talking to somebody else's campaign manager. And as a disability advocate, that's usually where I end up in a conversation. And, this poor guy, he's squirming because I'm telling him what actually happens, the end results of these policies that New York has. And it will get, I won't do it on your show because you lose your viewers, but, those details get pretty awful. And the guy's, squirming, and I'm talking about solutions and the problems at hand and what people don't see. And what I notice is, there's like 30 to 40 people gathered in the lobby trying to stay socially distanced. And what ends up happening is some of them are turning their ear, right? Like they're paying attention. And then they start to gather around. And then we get kicked out for not social distancing because everybody was listening to what I had to say. That was kind of an amazing experience. And it went on from there. I went up to submit my petitions, and, I get into go mode with the disability advocacy, and sometimes I just can't shut up. And that office was on quarter staff, and you could just tell how harried and overworked they were. I mean, you get up there and they're literally running through the office as they do what they do. And I'm just talking to the lady that's there to take my paperwork, and all of a sudden everybody stops. And again, everybody gathers around. And, the whole office stopped to listen to what I was saying. I mean, well, in that situation, that feels good. And, actually before that, down in the lobby, we got kicked out for not social distancing. They made us stand outside in the rain so that nobody got sick.
That's great. Well, by the way, you've brought up twice now because you were worried that this might not be a medical marijuana show or a medical cannabis show, to be more proper, and then you worried about gory. Don't worry about stuff like that with me. And for that matter, viewers need to be a little uncomfortable sometimes. if those things aren't exposed to people, then people don't have an opportunity to build empathy. So
Yep.
it's important. I say have at 'em, man. Just
Well, to be
anything
honest with you, I was just being polite. If I was truly worried, I wouldn't have said that much.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, don't be polite either.
Well, I actually ended my use of cannabis recently because I became a legal gun owner in New York, and you can't have both. Yep. Actually, if my administrative assistant would give me a hand, bring that over. It's a nice little video on my Facebook page of my very accessible AR-15.
That's nice, man.
So,
So,
so it's just a 223, right? It's not a doesn't fire cannonballs or tactical nukes or anything like that. Despite CNN, right? I don't know if you remember that.
right.
The rapid fire pump action shotgun that they called an AR-15. That was funny.
Right.
So in New York, if you pin the magazine, which is right there, right? So it's not removable, all right? Then in order to load it, if I can, it's not well broken. So you just have to break it open to load it. That's it. And you can have a 10-round mag. It just means you can't swap mags fast.
Right.
I don't want to kill people, so that doesn't bother me. I'm more about target shooting and, maybe some squirrel. I grew up eating squirrel. The other thing you get out of that for accessibility with my arm reach and everything is the adjustable stock, right? And the pistol grip.
Right.
But if you want to see me take the first shot that inspired out of this gun, you can go to my Facebook page, and that video is up there. And it's light. This is just under 6 pounds. And with my condition, that's important.
Yeah.
And everybody has a right to both self-defense and enjoyment.
Absolutely.
Mostly this target practice for me, but I intend to move on and get my pistol permit. And if I win the Senate, I will actually have enough money to get the gun that I really want, which is a Thompson Encore. I believe I can't remember, is it the longest pistol or the shortest rifle you can have? Who can tell? But it's a good deer gun. And I grew up eating venison.
I love venison.
Right. It is the healthiest red meat you can eat. And I'm an experienced butcher with it. I have a large family. They all hunt. They prefer me to do it rather than taking it to the butcher, spending $80 to have a bad job done, right?
I saw a video where you were talking about butchering meat, and was that part of a family business, or is that part of just growing up on a farm and eating venison?
It's called being hungry. Well, I mean, when you think about it, other than your permits, which have gone up in this state, which I believe is wrong, particularly for whitetail, it's overpopulated, and we removed their predators, so it really should be us who's tending the herd. It's if you know what you're doing when you take a deer, it's 50 pounds of red meat for the price of a bullet, other than your permits.
And how much are permits in New York?
I think it's like 125 to get your full permit for all game, other than trapping, which I'm not really a trapping enthusiast. It's not something that I like. It's a little inhumane for me. I prefer to just make a clean kill if you're going to take an animal.
Well, my dad was a hunter for food. He never hunted for sport. Mostly he just hunted squirrel, rabbit, things like that. So I grew up
I'm a big fan of squirrel. That was my first game that I took myself when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never got into it because I'll admit the necessity wasn't quite there for me. But I have about 130 acres now, and it the goings on this year, like, Rob, this is a skill you might want to acquire. So I'm working on it, but back to that humane thing, I'm not a good enough shot to trust myself with it yet. You know what I mean? Because I really, really don't want to maim an animal and not take the thing down and eat it. Because that would, I I would feel bad for like years. I'm one of those people.
Where I live, that's actually kind of a heated controversy among hunters, because local hunters, we're all about making that clean and quick kill and doing a
Absolutely.
proper hunt that doesn't disturb other hunters or endanger other hunters. And we have the sport hunting that you mentioned that I'm not really, one, you can't eat horns. and two, when people come from out of the area, from an urban area or out of state or whatever, what's weird? You can't own a gun legally and smoke a little marijuana, but apparently you can come here from the inner city, down a fifth of Fireball, and go trouncing through the woods and just shoot anything that moves, because they do it all the time. And it's insane. I mean, they think we're doing it wrong, but no.
Right.
People who rely on their weapon for what they need in life, which is the same reason that we were able to become a free nation, thanks to hillbillies and their hunting rifles. That forced the British to take George Washington head on as they moved south. They were trying to flank him, and people who owned land and protected what was theirs kept them from doing that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
So I wanted to talk a little bit about disability advocacy, because that is not one of those topics that people go, oh, of course, the libertarians, and it's exciting that you can lead us on that. You can, but tell me how do libertarians do that?
Okay, so first I am going to address the entire Libertarian Party, and I don't want to offend people, but our messaging on healthcare and welfare is improper. We want to end it, right? I mean, we all pretty much believe it's a corrupt system that takes too much and gives back too little, and that's appropriate. However, we already live in a country that creates more casualties of policy than war, and to just abruptly end it the way some people talk or think that needs to happen is incorrect. You will literally be hurting everyone at the bottom, everyone at the most need, and that's wrong. We need to step this back. I don't call myself a prag, and I'm not in the caucus, but there are certain things where we need to be more pragmatic. I mean,
Okay.
otherwise we're going to hurt people.
Right.
And so our messaging needs to tone down just a bit and offer options before we remove systems in place. That's really what needs to happen. If
Right.
we just cut it across the board, it's going to cause an awful lot of suffering, and our nation is already causing enough suffering in these regards. So for advocacy, there's a couple of things. I am on the board of a nonprofit called the Catskill Center for Independence, and they are, in this state, unfortunately, far too beholden to state rules and state money, and that's largely over what the state already takes out of the community, so the community is not really capable of donating as much as they would like. So they do have to play that game. They do have to play that paperwork game, and the state of New York actually presses far too much administrative oversight. It's almost ridiculous, and that has a cost associated with it. And at the same time, New York State has flatlined the funding for these nonprofits for decades. Cost has gone up. The money they get to work with has gone nowhere. And, obviously we all know about inflation as libertarians, right? So that makes it even worse. And then you get other programs involved. It is tough for the workers who work for these nonprofits. It is tough for social workers. That they actually have the biggest part of my heart. I spend an awful lot of time listening to social workers who are in pain because, it's their job to help people, and they spend so much time not being able to help people. They spend so much time dealing with the system, kicking back that you can't help this person that's in need. And then they have to be the one that goes to that person and tell them, we can't help you. Can you imagine how that feels when you're in that job to help?
Yeah.
It's not a high-paid
getting
job.
into the gory details.
And, they do the same thing to healthcare. In New York, our healthcare systems are taxed. And, there's just so many ways. I read an article that for just removing the extraneous state oversight, the extraneous hard business costs of being a doctor or a hospital. We could have between 1.5 and 1.8 doctors or hospitals per monetary capita.
Say
Meaning,
that again?
meaning we could have almost twice as many hospitals and doctors for the same price.
That's what I heard, but
And that's just because of the extraneous expenditures forced by the state.
well, and to me that's very believable because, even when I was young, I noticed that if you went to a doctor's office, there was a doctor, and then there were nurses, and then there was like a receptionist or two. And as the years have gone on, there's more receptionists or more people in the reception area. There's more people on phones to people who aren't patients, and they're shuffling paperwork that doesn't really, and none of this is really making people better. And one of the examples is you end up with people at the doctor's office arguing with your insurance company. Well, the real kicker is, and it could be government too, but the real kicker is when they're arguing with your insurance company and you've got these two people fighting, you're paying both of them. That's how that works.
Yep.
And the same thing happens when we're taxpayers and people are arguing over benefits for disabled. Is you're paying for both sides of that argument. You're paying for both sides of that fight.
Yeah, and I can actually speak to that very personally, and both in my advocacy. So I'm pushing 7 years now of direct advocacy. That's where I, pardon me, either I get referred to someone or I find them on the internet. I use Facebook groups a lot, that kind of thing. And when I recognize a problem that I know how to address, I just address it. But then I ended up being one of those people that needed addressing. I applied to get the same exact wheelchair that I had 5 times before, right? I'd gotten the same model, same brand, same features, same everything, 5 times already. Mm-hmm. And they said, no, you can't have this anymore. You can have a range of these wheelchairs that will kill you slowly. Again, back to my disability, osteogenesis imperfecta, very brittle bones, right? I had over 1,000 fractures by the time I was 16. And I know that sounds terrible. I saw the face you made, right? It's like, right? But to me, that's whatever. It is what it is. And when I got that drug that I had to fight the FDA in order to get, that took my fracture rate from over 100 a year down to less than 1. Why did I have to fight a government institution to get that drug?
Why did you have to fight a government institution to get that drug?
Good question. Wasn't approved.
Now, was it not approved due
for my condition specifically?
So it was a discussion of efficacy. They already knew the safety of it.
Right. Which it really didn't make sense. They knew what the drug did.
Right.
It's a metabolic drug. It slows the process of removing bone, which increases the process of adding new bone, and therefore porous bone fills in, becomes more dense, and your fracture rate goes down.
So this actually relates to something on Joe Jorgensen's platform. For that matter, something on my platform as well. But Joe Jorgensen will talk about the FDA. Sorry, my cat clawed my foot there. Joe Jorgensen will talk about the FDA no longer being concerned with efficacy. Just safety. Let's reduce what the FDA's concern is to just safety. I would rather see they just be reduced to advocacy and not regulatory at all. You want to go out there and tell us what you think safe, and maybe we can have some free market competition. I would rather see that and leave these decisions up to the patient and the doctors.
And there's some very interesting things about the FDA. They approve an awful lot of things that they ban later. And they seem to approve them very quickly.
Right.
It's almost like the more money you throw at the FDA, the better results you get if you're selling something.
Well, I'm going to flub over the terms, but one of my pet peeves is, I think they call them, it's like I can't remember the name, but basically it's medications or drugs that there aren't laws around because they predated the FDA cracking down on such things, and they were in pervasive use, so they couldn't just say stop using them. But right now, by right now I mean for like the last 15 years, they've been on this quest to correct that. So what they do is they tell companies, hey, we're going to make it, worth your while if you get a branded version of this approved. And there might be 6 companies out there selling it, and they're selling it at like, say, $15 a vial. And this one company goes through all the time and expense of getting their branded version sort of certified, sort of approved. And then the FDA, true to the word, makes it worth their while because they tell the other people you can't sell this anymore. So now it's like $150 or $200 a vial. So yes, the company that went through that time and trouble is very well compensated.
There was another study that I read for the price out of pocket at one time recently for a hip replacement. Mm-hmm. You could fly to Spain, get your hip replaced, vacation for 2 years, run with the bulls, screw up your other hip, get that replaced, and fly home.
Wow.
Tell me that's not government influence.
Wow. So back to the wheelchair. How much? What would be like wholesale for one of these wheelchairs? Like, could I just buy one? What would one cost me?
Well, thanks to our government regulations and rules, which have placed caps on equipment as well as other medications, everything you want in a certain category of equipment will cost exactly that cap. And New York has capped power wheelchairs at $19,000. Guess what they all cost?
They're all $19,000.
You can actually get one of, I think the list is like 20 cars, brand new for $20,000. But for 19, you get a wheelchair. And they're garbage. They're garbage. They wouldn't get me out
Any
my
idea
door.
what they are in Canada or Mexico?
I'm sure they're a lot cheaper in Mexico. Everything seems to be cheaper in Mexico. I actually have friends there, and it was once a thing to keep your residency and move to Mexico to live in a rather fancy condo with better health care on your welfare dollars because you just got so much more for it. And it was once a thing to smuggle wheelchairs to Canada, but now it's kind of the other way around. And with my state in particular, there's a good comparison here. I have never seen it personally take less than 6 to 18 months to get a wheelchair from going through the system to receiving it. And I have a friend who also has
that's
a
a paperwork bottleneck, right? I mean, it's not any kind of manufacturing or parts or anything like that. It's just...
Well, I'm about to explain that.
Okay.
I have a friend who's also disabled and a disability advocate, and he recently moved to New Mexico. Guess how long it took him to get his wheelchair from start to finish, the very first step to receiving it?
8 days.
6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of modifications that go into making the seating system,
Okay, I can see that.
Yep. So we were talking about libertarians and voluntarism and all that, right? So I was in a situation where the state wouldn't give me a wheelchair that worked for me. And I spent over a year dividing whatever funds I could come up with, saving from my SSI, to collecting parts to fix the other chair, which is still right here waiting to be fixed. By the way, I have a bunch of parts and we are going after that still because it's a backup. Right. And making my home more automated. Like I could turn my lights on and off by voice, made my computer and TV more wireless, things like that. Right. So that I could try to stay sane while I was bedridden. Kind of futile for kind of mind that I have, but you got to try, right? And I was looking at literally a rear end assembly for the wheelchair on eBay. And the eBay app, it gives you that nice little swipey thing. It gives you that teaser of the next thing when you swipe, right? It shows you just a little bit so that you can move over and look at the next item. Well, it was an entire wheelchair. It was exactly the model I needed. Guess how much it cost us?
I have no idea.
$6,500.
Oh,
That
that's
includes
nice.
crating and shipping to get it here from Austin, Texas, which I was looking forward to getting back to with it, but you know what happened with our convention this year, right?
Right.
But think about that. I mean, the chair was 20 years old, but it was also never used. And to me, that's very much a fate thing, right? I mean, it's a low production model of wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even rarer to find one with all of the features that I need, which is actually 4 different kinds of suspension. I live in a rural area. There's no going anywhere outside your home without lots of bumps. And with my
Right.
condition, right, that's important.
Well, I was worried about even firing the gun, which with the 223, I don't guess it's that bad. But
Nope, not at all. And actually, um, since I've been on that treatment that I received now, no thanks to the FDA, I'm a lot stronger. But the problems I have lay in old fracture sites, right?
right.
And my joints, primarily my hips, are the worst part. And so that jostle of up and down over bumps um, could break my hip if I'm not careful.
Wow.
However, in this wheelchair, I don't have to worry about that because this
Air.
has air ride,
There you
just
go.
like they put on a semi tractor trailer. Um, and
Well,
so
I
I can
was.
adjust the suspension to what I need. Um, and to that matter, it does have an air horn. So when I'm shopping, all the teenagers in the parking lots that like to go too fast, I can let them know I'm there when I need to.
Sure.
But you know, as much as I had been reaching out and teaching other people with disabilities to self-advocate, right, it's very hard for someone in that situation when the government systems, right, that seems like the big bad, helper, right? And they have all the power. They're giving the most help. They're doing this, yada yada yada. And so people think when they say no, that means there's no way.
Mm.
But the reality is that people need to keep trying. They need to speak out. They need to say what they need to say. They need to ask for what they need. And even after 4 or 5 years of doing that, well, close to 6 years of doing that for other people, I had to be convinced to allow it to be done for me by 2 other libertarians. And it turned out to be mostly libertarians who donated to the fundraiser to get this.
Yay.
Right? I mean, we are all about voluntary action,
Right.
voluntarily crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of
So,
us really do get excited when we see an opportunity to help. I mean, we are those sorts of people. My wife gets on me because I'm one of those people where if somebody's broke down or something like that, I'm always the guy that wants to stop and see if they need anything or help somebody push a car off the highway or that kind of stuff. And she's always afraid I'm gonna get knocked in the back of the head one day, which I guess could happen. But
and there's when it comes to disability advocacy, and this is what spurred on my race.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot in the community that goes unseen. People like to think that the welfare systems work because we do see people with disabilities get help, and we do see people in the community with certain disabilities. But I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you from personal experience that there are horror stories going on all around all of us all of the time. And all you have to do is look to find them. And you better have a strong stomach and a strong will, or it will kill you. Um, I know a young lady who lives about 8 miles from me in a quote unquote better community oriented disability home.
Okay.
And when I met her, the stories she told me about what she went through to getting there um, broke my heart. And then I found out she's still having similar kinds of problems there. And I told her the one thing that the welfare systems don't tell you And in fact, they do have a certain brand of social worker that comes around and teaches you how to communicate with people, how to be complacent and accept your fate, I guess. Um, but
Yeah, that
that's
sounds horrible.
incorrect in my opinion. And I told this young lady, you point your finger and you get loud and you reach out and you tell people what's going on, and you tell people what you need. And
Hmm.
if you don't get loud and if you don't do that, then no one's going to listen. And if no one
Right.
listens, nothing's going to get done. And now it's been over a year since I've been able to visit her, right? And I finally had the opportunity. We're doing the pain thing. We're driving back and forth. And I go, look, let's stop and see her. I haven't seen her in a while. Let's just stop and see her. And I stop and I see this young lady. And while I'm there, a representative of an independent advocate group shows up. And I find out that they've been working with her. They've whipped the facility back into shape. Things are going better for her. She has been loud. She has told people what she needed and what was going on. And her life is getting better. She recently produced a COVID documentary to be released in Pennsylvania from the perspective of her and her aides and workers. And that's amazing, because what a lot of people fail to realize is that the last people that this state, New York, and a whole handful of other states protected were those with disabilities, meaning at risk, and healthcare workers. I mean, my governor literally turned away masks that were sitting cargo ships full of masks when this began because the FDA didn't approve them. And right, and set us up to be in a situation where our healthcare workers are being laid off. Right, they're claiming this big pandemic and laying off healthcare workers. Great management job, Andrew Cuomo. You got to continue your tenure of killing the disabled, something you've been doing since you got into office.
Well,
And
something that amazed me with these masks is, I mean, were all these masks that weren't FDA approved, were all of them as good as what was? Were some of them bad? I don't know. But you have to remember, in March, we were talking about the possibility of healthcare workers wearing bandanas. I'm not real sure about what were they, the X95s as opposed to the N95s, or, different classifications. I don't know if they were as good, but I bet they were better than bandanas. you know?
and I don't know where I land on the masks, right? But at this point, it's about fear, and to me, fear is a disease.
Yeah.
And everybody is afraid, or a lot of people are afraid. And I'm actually not supposed to wear a mask. I have a health exemption. I'm prone to bronchitis.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time because I treat my own conditions. Um, but,
How do masks
the cloth
contribute to
mask in
bronchitis?
particular. Say that again?
How do masks contribute to bronchitis?
The cloth masks in particular can grow the bacteria that are naturally in your mouth. And if you wear them for a prolonged period of time, moisture builds up, and you get these clusters of bacteria that grow on the mask, and then they can break up and you can inhale them, and then you've got a larger colony going into the lungs that your immune system may or may not be able to handle. And it's just a greater risk. And so I don't wear a mask unless I run into someone's fear condition. If someone near me is in fear or greater risk, maybe they're a chemo patient, right?
Right.
Of course, I will wear a mask.
Sure.
But
Well, you can wear one for a short period of time. You can't
yes,
be wearing one all day every day.
right,
You shouldn't.
right. And I'm not anti-mask. It's just me. I'm not gonna unless it's for somebody else. For someone else, for their fear, for their risk, I will. For me, no.
Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't have much of a problem with masks until we were at National, and I started wearing mine a lot because I live in a rural area and I'm mostly at home. Even without COVID, I'm mostly at home. I'm a software engineer. So I just hadn't worn mine much. And I took most of the year off to campaign and hadn't really been out shaking hands because people would be terrified. But man, we got to Orlando and I was wearing a mask like half the day. It like, you feel sick by the end of the day, or I feel sick by the end of the day. Maybe I'm the only one, but and I don't think it was psychosomatic because they hadn't bothered me before that. It's just you got there for an extended period of time, they mess with you.
Yep. And I did not wear a mask in Orlando.
Yeah, I saw you not wearing a mask in Orlando.
And I shook an
I
awful
was
lot of
about
hands.
half the time. It depends on where you saw me.
Yeah, and I shook an awful lot of hands. And I did get tested as soon as I got back to New York because there was a walk-in clinic. And no COVID.
Yeah. I did not get tested when I got back to Kentucky. I did quarantine for like 2 weeks because I could without any real inconvenience. But they got
That
nutty
is
with
actually,
they got nutty with locking people down in Kentucky. So it's like I don't want to get tested because then they'll know and then they'll trace everybody who I haven't even been. It's like no, we're not doing
well,
that to them.
I believe my Facebook profile says I'm too genuine for my own good. And here's what happened when I got back from Orlando. Not only did I get tested, but I was honest about it.
Okay.
And by state rules, that meant that I had to go for 2 weeks without my disability aid, someone who helps me in the home with the things that I can't do.
Wow.
Mainly sweeping and mopping and obvious stuff that I probably shouldn't be doing. And the interesting part there is that I got tested 7 days and I still had to wait, and I got cleared after 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I still had to wait the full 14 to have my aid back. COVID clear, still got to wait that extra week. What's the point? Why would you put someone in a disability in that situation? Then, furthermore, I was told to rely on family supports. Well, the only family I have who can do that is the cousin that lives up the street who is my aide. Right? And
Lovely.
yeah. And it actually gets worse. I've been going, well, I had spent some time going to some of the rallies that were going on. It's a good opportunity to meet young people who've been cooped up and bored, and they just come out to see whatever's going on, right? And it's a good place to make new libertarians. That's why I was there. And so I'm down in Broome County, Binghamton proper, and I'm waiting for this march to start. And I see this gentleman in a wheelchair sitting by a bench with a bag that's got bottles of water and some old-looking sandwiches. And it turns out he's homeless. When the COVID lockdown happened in New York, he was going through a rehabilitation after a spinal surgery where they actually removed half of his spine.
Ow.
And he was supposed to go through the homeless shelter system after that. Well, to save his life, they didn't allow him to go into a homeless shelter or any other assistance. No, he has to sleep on the street. That's for his own good, I saw his spine scar, and I don't know if you've ever seen a spinal surgical scar, but it's pretty gnarly, and it's not a good situation to be in. And it turns out, he wasn't the only one. Turns out an awful lot of people were deprioritized again in this situation. And I always like to remind people that our societies and in humanity throughout history, we're not remembered for how glorious our governors looked on TV or in whatever media was going on at the time. What we're remembered for is how we treated those at the bottom. That's our legacy. What do we want our legacy in this country to be? Do we want to be the legacy of that which takes $10 and gives back $2 to help the disabled? Or do we want to be the legacy that allows communities to help themselves and each other? Do we want to be the legacy that deprioritizes those at the bottom and hurts those at the least the most? Or do we want to be the legacy that allowed people to do for themselves and find their own confidence? And, as a disability advocate, the worst situations I run into are when able-bodied people become disabled suddenly. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know the optics. They don't understand the drive you need to have. There's actually such a thing as wheelchair shame. Once someone ends up in a wheelchair, they are ashamed to be seen in one.
Got ya.
And that just goes far. I had a conversation with a woman in another county.
What percent of people experience that? Do you have any idea? Because
most. Most.
Most.
Most. The other thing is that aging is a disability, right? Sooner or later, if you live long enough, you're going to spend a period of time with a severe disability.
Right.
And that means that this should matter to everyone.
Right. Well, I'm certainly one of those people, if I'm injured or something like that, you know, I've had a few of those occasions. I'm not very good at receiving help. I get that, but I've, like, the wheelchair shame one sort of surprises me a bit. I don't think I would be ashamed, but I would be one of those people that would probably be risking hurting myself trying to do things I shouldn't be doing.
Which that's me. I always take the risk. I always try to do things myself.
Right.
And that's
Well,
when I don't
we like self-empowerment. We're you know, as libertarians, we're kind of wired that way. That's us.
And with my specific condition, it's important to keep doing. I'll
Excellent.
lose muscle tone faster. I'll lose joint health faster if I'm sedentary. And that's why I can butcher a large deer with 2 broken arms. Because I figured out how. But in my own experience, you know, my family watched me grow up with this. They watched my tenacity. They watched me learn how to do things despite all odds. And yet, both my father and my maternal grandmother had serious problems of being seen disabled. Despite, you know, I'm the guy that ran away before he got a wheelchair. I was 4 when I got my first wheelchair. 3 years old. I made it several hundred yards away from the house.
So, not that we exactly have a hard stop, but you know, people will watch videos of only finite length. They'll see 3.5 hours. I'm not starting that. But I wanted you to educate me a bit, because I am one of those people who think one of the major problems with our healthcare system is we've incentivized health insurance to such a degree. And the health insurance we're talking about is health insurance that pays for every doctor visit, every pill. And, you know, that's not efficient. You know, you run into the third-party payer problem. And in my mind, what we really want is we really want people to only be buying catastrophic insurance and for paying for the normal, affordable things they can. You know, because how many extra middlemen do you want between you and something that you can afford to buy? You're just going to jack up the cost. But how do we rewind? How do we get there? That seems to be the problem.
Well, we need a lot of deregulation. And, you know, a lot of people seem to forget that it is our state governments, any state you're in, duty, job, and responsibility to rebel or fight against any federal legislation that hinders the happiness and health of their constituents. So if you live in New York has every obligation to tell the feds to screw off.
That's right.
And they don't. And that's a big problem. Because when they don't, that's how we see these systems get bastardized so badly. I mean, why does it cost $5 for a plastic syringe?
Right. That's crazy.
And, you know, I have a very good example. I have 2 of them with this wheelchair. The batteries on this wheelchair, to get them through the system, I've never seen them cost less than $2,400. They're the same batteries that go in golf carts and forklifts. Same brand, same everything, same rating. Guess how much they cost me out of pocket when I go to the golf cart dealer?
I've never bought. Can you tell me how big they are, power-wise?
They're 12-volt deep cycle gel cell batteries. Each one weighs about 55 pounds. And to buy a pair from a golf cart dealer is about $550.
Okay, well, you said a pair, and I was doing one. I said $250, so I was on the nose on that one. I got one. Finally got one.
I got a worse one for you. The cushion that I sit on, it's very specific. The material is antimicrobial. The foam is antimicrobial. It's meant to breathe and wick water. right? So
Right.
that to prevent bed sores. The biggest prevention to bed sores, which is now a climbing reason for death among the disabled, when we had a handle on it in the 70s, the biggest reason is not staying clean and dry. Bathe
Right.
and stay dry. That's all you need to do. People aren't doing that now because we suppressed our healthcare system to the point where we don't have enough healthcare workers. Um, but the
This is
cushion
the
is
million
designed for
dollar
that.
baby problem. Remember that
Yes.
movie? So
But the cushion costs, I've never seen it less than $1,200 through a system. I got it for $30. I got the materials, put it together myself for $30.
so yeah, these are prime examples. Is you have to have insurance because you can't afford this stuff once government gets involved to help you.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the manufacturer's websites and bought overstock, and I made it for $30. But we're lulled into this system. Oh, we need the government to get it for us. We need the government to make sure it costs $1,200, and we need to make sure that they force our neighbors to pay for that instead of just letting us spend $30.
Right. Right.
And there is one more thing with disabilities, which I'm sorry that I've stayed on this so much.
You're
Um,
the expert on this.
it is my passion. Um, we're not allowed to work without losing the help, right?
Yeah, I was going to
Uh,
bring that one up. Incentivize employment of the disabled. It's on your
um,
site.
so the SSI that I get, if I make too much money, I lose it, and that's a qualifier for health insurance, right? So if I make too much money, in the garbage I go as far as the government's concerned.
Right.
Um, so when I entered this race, my social workers were mad. They were screaming at me, you can't do this. You're going to lose everything. You're going to die. Because they were afraid for me. They care, right?
Right.
But they actually worked their butts off because they knew me and they knew why I was doing it. And,
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, this government, particularly in New York, has tried to kill me every single year of my life. So, the Libertarian Party gave me the wheelchair that gave me at least another 8 years of my life back. I'm not going to waste it. And so I did it. And, they fought, and I've been able to keep my aid, and I've been able to keep that one treatment, although I no longer have any other health care. That I have 3 insurances, and there's only one thing they cover that I need. They cover a whole lot of things that I don't need. But, the real point here is there's this gap between what you get on welfare and what you need to live, particularly if you have a disability. And I think I'm
Mm-hmm.
living proof that you could still do things with a severe disability.
Right.
Life is greater than tranquilizers in the TV remote. You know,
Right.
we're lulled into thinking that taking that pill and watching that TV is all we need to be happy in life.
Well,
That note, I was talking to a woman who has a spine injury for 7 years now, and she is not satisfied. And she's not getting the care she needs. Um, the PT and OT that she needs, she's not getting it. She's gone 7 years without the ability to call for help. Gone 7 years without enough care.
why
Gone
did
seven
she go
years
for?
often. Yep.
Why did she not have
Often,
the ability to
in very
call for help?
dangerous situations.
Well, I'm because I'm a candidate too. I don't know if I mentioned that, but
Well, I
maybe
can
I
see
should.
that on your screen.
Ah, yeah, there you go. You're very able-minded, but I maybe shouldn't admit this, but like throughout my life, off and on, I'd have problems with like depression. I mean, not like I never saw anybody for it. I never was diagnosed. I was never on everything, but just one of those people who would go through phases where, I'd be, ugh. And I learned eventually that the key thing for me was to literally do things I value. If I do, like, and I'll catch myself, I'll get depressed and I'll realize I haven't done any of the things I value. I haven't written any code, I haven't solved any problems, I haven't, none of the things I personally value. I haven't built anything. I get depressed. And, I can literally overcome that in a matter of hours simply by doing. So if you took that away from me, I don't know how I could cope with that. I don't know that I could cope with that. That would be hard.
Yeah, and that's exactly part of the advice that I gave this woman today, because we were talking about the nature of a disability. And spine injuries are funny. You lose some here, you lose some there. She's technically a quad, but she's got some muscle groups that she can still work here and there. And I talked to her, focus on what you can do. Exercise the muscles you have that you can control, that you could work.
Right.
There was I can't remember his name or what his sport was, but there was an athlete that suffered a neck injury, and he lost the use of everything but his big toe. And being an athlete who had a workout mindset, he just sat there working that big toe. You know what he's doing now?
What?
Playing sports. Full on sports. Got it
He's
all
doing
back.
what?
He got it all back. It was
Wow.
a quad, and he got it all back. Just
Bit at a
because he
time.
didn't give up. See, and this is another big problem. The I can'ts, the you can'ts, right? Doctors will
Right.
tell you can't, and family will tell you can't or you shouldn't, and you will think to yourself, I can't or I shouldn't, and it's wrong. No, if that big toe is moving or whatever it is in your life that you can do, that's what you need to do. You need to set upon something that is hope, something that is progress, something that is working towards your goal. If you
Right.
don't do that, you're lost.
Focusing on what you can't do is death. Focusing on what you can do is life.
Yep. And it matters. It matters so much more than people think. And I know it sounds hokey and I know it sounds stupid, but if you're out there and you're watching this and you have a severe disability, or maybe not so severe of a disability, or maybe you're in a different life situation, and there is something that you can focus on to make progress with whatever problem or issue it is you have, what you need to be doing is what you can do, and not even bothering to worry about what you can't do.
Well, that's not disability specific. That's, everybody has some sort of problem, and a lot of our society feels pinned down, and that's the thing I really dislike about the Democratic Party. Is the Democratic Party really tells them they are pinned down and says you're trapped without our help. I hate that. I can't stand that.
Well, their messaging is terrible at the politician level. When you talk to the constituents of the voters, we all want the same thing. Libertarians know that. We all want the same things. And to that note, I'm actually having active conversations with both of the big parties. I've been able to speak and reach out and have them reach out to me, other politicians from the Democrats and the Republicans who actually do care. They may not be the most popular in their party. They may not be the most powerful in their party, but they are actually in those parties. And there are people out there who care. And so if you are a libertarian candidate, which you are, but anybody watching this, my biggest suggestion is find the ones that you can talk to. Find the ears that will listen to you. Be reasonable. Mitigate. Make sure that we are not succumbing to the same vitriol as some of the others. And have those conversations, especially if they're hard. Especially if it's a hard conversation.
Thomas, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. I've learned a lot. I'm actually, this is one of those cases I'm going to go back and watch the video. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of these after I make them. This is one I'm going to go back and watch because I think there was a lot here. Something we didn't capture is, where is District 2 New York? You're running for Senate District 52?
District 52 is Broome County, Tioga County, Happishinanga County, and a little bit of Delaware County. And, if you support me, if you like what I said, I need to add one thing that I didn't talk about with disability issues.
Yeah.
The best thing we can do is give our economy back to our communities, because it's our communities, it's our neighbors, it's our friends, it's our loved ones, it's the people who know us who will help us most. I have experience with this when it comes to advocating for people with disabilities. When I find someone who the system did not provide for, the first thing I ask is, who's your family? Who's your neighbors? Who do you know? Those are the people who are going to help you. Often we end up crowdfunding or giving direct assistance. And you know what? If we give it back to our communities, they're going to get it. And we need to grow our economy, particularly in this district. The incumbent has ignored it, and we need to grow our economy. And
we need
you know,
we need to grow
to
it.
that note,
Go ahead.
to that note, donate to my campaign. Unfortunately, this is New York State. You have to vote with your dollars. Tomfor52.com, TOMFOR52.com. There is a nice donate button. And, whatever I don't care if it's $3 or $300 or $3,000, whatever you can donate will help. We have radio ads coming out. We have TV ads in production. We have another politician looking to dump more thousands of dollars on our advertising. We do have a political consultant. My campaign manager is amazing. Our team is amazing. It's really going through, and our door knocking numbers are thrilling.
That's awesome. So I'm going to do something that's going to seem weird for a second, but I'm going to put my donation thing up there for just a second, because that way, if I run a Facebook ad, in the areas you just described, maybe people donate to me. I guess that's possible. But though I'll understand if they want to stay closer to home and vote for Tom for 52.
But it always helps to ask. You always be asking. Never stop asking. My donors range from Florida to Hawaii, California, Alaska, even I don't think outside the country yet, but I've had some offers.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's legal. I know it's not for me.
Not. Yeah, that's why I said it that way. But at almost every state, there's an individual who has donated to my campaign. And I tell you what, there are a few politicians that have said things that I really agree with. This is New York State. What happens in New York State for policy spreads to the rest of the country. And it's the same in California. What happens in California spreads to the rest of the country. And if you notice, California and New York, we tend to be competing for who can be the worst. And, not to knock your race, I hope people donate to you. I really, really do. We need libertarian congressmen. But when it comes to states and state policy, this is where it's at. I'm in a good race.
I have some down ballot candidates here in Kentucky I'm very passionate about. We won't talk about those tonight, though, because tonight's about you. So please help Thomas. There's no quit and quitter.
Queeter. No quit and queeter.
Queeter.
Old French. The word can actually translate to too free.
Okay. Queeter. Okay. I meant to ask before we started the show, but then we had those technical distractions.
So that happens a lot. But there's no quit and queeter. And, I'm not going to stop fighting for not just the people in my district or the people in my state, but all people, in this country. Everyone ends up with a disability sooner or later. Everyone needs to be able to rely on their communities. Everyone needs a good economy. Everyone deserves the opportunity to thrive.
Well, I wish you the very best, sir. I think you're going to do an excellent job for the people in New York. And that ultimately means you'll be doing a good job for all of us, really. So thank you very much. And thank you for the wisdom you've passed along. And thanks to everyone for joining. I hope you learned something. I know I did. Have a good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.